So we've got something exciting in the works today. In the car, picking up something that we found on a Facebook group. And so for all of my backyard homesteaders, you know exactly what that means. We're bringing a new animal home. And that new animal is a Kune pig. 2 of them, actually. We're getting 2 females. And this is really our first animal that we're bringing on the homestead for the sole purpose of butchering. You know, we got the chickens so that we could have backyard eggs, and even for compost so that we could use all their bedding. We got the goats for the purposes of milk, whether that be for cheese or for the soap that we're making or just to consume the milk. This really is the first animal that we're going to bring on the homestead, raise on the homestead, and then process to have meat for our family. We're going to bring them inside and show them around. Their first day of slaughter. They're kind of hanging out in their stall right now. But a lot of people have asked me, why do you plan on butchering these piglets if you're going to just treat them like pets and love on them and give them names? Is that not a little inhumane? Is that not kind of rude? And I would say, if anything, this is the nicest thing you could do to an animal, is give it the best life possible. You know, the other option is factory farming, where they don't care about naming their animals or giving them even a good life. Their goal is their pockets. And for this, you know, I want to treat these piglets with the utmost respect possible, because I do. I love them. I care for them. These 2 might end up being breeders. We're not 100% sure if we're actually going to process these or not. We might wait and breed them and process their kids. But these 2, you know, even if we did process them, I mean, they're hanging out in the backyard, they're hanging out with the chickens and goats, they're going to live the best life possible over the next 12 to 14 months. And if anything, that makes me feel way better knowing exactly where my meat came from, knowing exactly how they were treated and raised. I mean, these pigs are so nice. They like us to just pet them and scratch them. And if you think that's mean, I mean, I guess I understand the sentiment, this idea of like, why would you want to name it and love it and care for it? Because won't that be sad? I mean, yeah, I think it's going to be heartbreaking when I have to process them, but they're also going to fulfill their purpose and exactly what we want them for, which is providing sustainable, healthy meat for my family. We really like the people that we got these guys from. There's a little farm up in Ellijay, Georgia, up north in Georgia, and they handled them from piglets, and so that's why you're able to just kind of pet on these guys. And so I get to just sit in their stall while they're napping and just kind of pet them a little bit, which is really fun, because we always wanted animals that our kids could come and handle and hang out with. And you know, our kids run around and chase the chickens all day long, and they hang out with the goats and pet Franklin and all of these things. And so we really wanted to add some more animals that our kids can interact with. You know, we've got a 4-year-old, a 2-year-old, and a 1-year-old, and I just love that they're able to grow up around this stuff. And so we're trying to make the friendliest pigs possible so that our kids can hang out with them more. Now the roosters, on the other hand, are both kind of turds, and like to go after the kids a little bit. But we're teaching our oldest one, our 4-year-old, to kick the roosters when they get near and say, "I'm in charge." And so that's been pretty fun. Now I think the ultimate goal for the future would be to give the pigs some dedicated space out behind the chicken area. We're going to just do some hot wire fence and some hog paneling to keep them safe. But for now, the goats and the piglets are kind of sharing the same area, but the goats are highly offended at the moment. They don't appreciate the new animals in town. Everyone's still getting used to the pigs. These guys will walk around and every other animal kind of scatters. The chickens have been really alarmed and the goats are not the biggest fans. But it was kind of nice because last night it rained a lot, and so the goats were kind of forced to come in here, and so we kind of had a whole little stall in here full of pigs and goats, and it's really fun. I just kind of love this idea, especially with backyard homesteading, that you don't need all of these separate pens. We have 2 enclosures here on the homestead. We've got an enclosure for our boys. We have 2 intact Nigerian dwarf bucks, and so we keep them separate from the does. But in this area right here, in this enclosure, we've got 35 chickens, 6 ducks, 3 goats, and now 2 cooney pigs. And it's just fantastic. It's perfect for backyard homesteads because you don't have to have a ton of space, a ton of enclosures. This is plenty of space for the animals that we have, and it serves our purpose as well. You know, a lot of times when you hold pigs or you hear about piglets squealing, that's what we love about the people we got these 2 from, is the fact that they handled them so much that they really don't squeal that much. Now, they don't love being held particularly, but they are totally comfortable being handled and hung out with, and that's exactly what we want in an animal. We wish we had that more in our goats. Both Waffles and Franklin, our 2 bucks, are both totally fine to be handled and pet and all that stuff, but our does are kind of skittish and don't love it. But, you know, it's important to be able to walk up and pet your animals, especially if they're injured or sick and you need to check on them. You know, having animals that trust you is really important. And so we're trying to cultivate that more. Fern's trying to knock the camera over right now. She's rooting around into the camera. You know, we did a decent bit of research too when it comes to the coonies, and they're perfect for backyard homesteads because their butchering weight is a decent bit lower than you would get with like a guinea hog or a Yorkshire or any other real blend of hog or pig. You know, they say the processing weight for coonies, at least from what I've read, and you know, I'm still pretty new on this, is between 150 and 250 pounds, which takes anywhere between 12 and 14 months. Now, these guys are born at the end of October, I think beginning of November, and so, you know, it's the end of December now, so it's, you know, coming up on 2 months old, so it'll be another year or so of growth before we end up processing these guys. But, you know, they say coonies don't even reach full maturity until like 4 years of age. They're a fairly slow growing hog. But these 2, if we end up processing them, of course, we'll probably end up processing about a year from now, because that's when it starts the equation that they have of cost effectiveness of feeding them versus what you're getting back, I guess, goes down around that between 150 and 250 pounds. From what I've read, we're still pretty novice at this. This is just some general reading I've done, so we'll probably end up sending them to the processor about a year from now if we decide to do that. We still really are thinking heavily of breeding these 2 because they come from a really good line. They're both double wattled. They're great pigs, and so we're thinking about renting a good boar and then breeding them both out, and then maybe having them just simply be our breeders, and then either selling off their piglets or using them and processing them, because we have got a nice standing freezer inside now that I just bought off Facebook that I would like to make good use of, and so it would be nice to have some pork straight from the homestead. And then as we start growing out a lot of our chicks in the spring, because we're going to let any of our chickens go broody that want to this spring, and any of the cockerels that we have, we're going to process in the spring. Another thing that we really took into account when we were getting the pigs was the fact that we didn't want to have to get another animal that was going to change how we do everything, that needed an entirely new housing situation, an entirely new enclosure to be separate from everyone else, and pigs kind of just fall right in line. We're gonna give them slop, all of our leftovers from the house, plus add in a little bit of hog feed on top of it. But other than that, the water's here. Like I said, they're sharing a goat house with the goats right now. It really didn't add much to our plate here to add the pigs. And so that's kind of really what we look for when it comes to adding new animals on the homestead, is how much time is it going to add to our plate? Because, you know, I work full time, and so I really can't dedicate an extra half an hour to an hour every day for a bunch of different animals that have a ton of different needs. The idea of us being kind of back here on a backyard homestead is the fact that the chicken chores take a couple minutes a day. Filling up the waters just takes a couple minutes a day. Feeding all the animals in the morning takes a few minutes. I mean, I'm out here actually tending to animals from like a care perspective for less than 30 minutes every day. And the other hour I'm out here is typically just petting them and trying to make them my friend, because I love being out here. But from a pure care perspective, like I said, we've got 2 pigs now, 5 goats, 35 chickens, 6 ducks, and I'm out here for less than 30 minutes a day. And so that's kind of the idea behind what we're doing here, is how much can we do without adding much time to what we're already doing. And so 2 pigs has been nice. You know, Honeysuckle here, we were wondering if she would be a good barn cat, considering she's just like a beautiful cat that we figured an old lady would steal just to take home and put on her lap. But the other day, we did catch her eating a bird. We've seen her eating a rat so far. So she's actually doing her job quite well. And so that's been a nice addition to the homestead too. But this is just kind of a look back here. You know, if you're thinking about starting a backyard homestead, I guess my personal recommendation, I've really only been doing this for a little over a year now, but I feel like a really solid progression is starting with chickens. Chickens are pretty low maintenance. Once you get your systems in place, they really don't need much from you. And it's a good introduction into sort of growing food in your own backyard from a livestock / like animal perspective, not a garden. They give you meat and, you know, from them, and they also give you eggs as well. I feel like that's a great starting process. And then from there, sort of graduating into your larger livestock, whether that be pigs or goats or sheep, things of that nature. We went with goats because we want milk. We want to use the milk for soaps and things like that. And we just want to use the milk as well. But, you know, so that's why we got our goats. You know, we're going to start breeding them out. And then we went to pigs, because this is going to be the first one that we really got as far as it just being purely dedicated to stocking our freezer. And like I said, if we can get a situation where we are able to rent out a boar to breed them out, we could get ourselves in a process where every year we're able to sell off some of the piglets and then keep a couple and process them and have a continuous sort of flow of meat going into our freezer, which is ultimately what we want. You know, the idea here is taking baby steps toward self-sufficiency and honestly having more of a closed system. And so the garden that we have in the spring is going to be full of a ton of produce that we're going to eat, and all of the leftovers and scraps of that produce is going to go to our pigs, which ultimately is going to feed us. That same produce also goes to feeding the chickens, which then goes to poop, which then goes to compost, and the compost goes back in the garden. And so trying to keep everything as closed system as possible is kind of the heart behind homesteading. You know, not having to go to the big box store for your food, or at least a decent bit of it. So we're not going to have to go for pork or for our veggies or for our eggs or for our chicken. And we're also not going to have to go to a big box store to get fertilizer or compost or even, you know, gardening seeds after the first year, because we're going to be able to save them. And so just trying to create processes slowly but surely to give yourself a chance at having as much of a closed system as possible is kind of the goal here. At least that's what we're trying to do. So over the next couple of weeks, we're going to start building out the pig area in the back, but make sure you put in the comments, what is your favorite animal that you've added to your homestead, and why should I add that here? Because we're always looking to add good quality animals that make sense for our backyard situation here on the homestead. Like I said, we're on just a little over a half an acre here. We don't have a ton to work with, but we are trying to utilize as much space as possible while still giving all of our animals more than the sort of directed amount of space that people think that they should have. Like, this is above and beyond what all of the recommendations are for space per animal, and we really like to keep it that way because we just want our animals to be happy. We want them to have plenty of space and be able to roam around and do their thing, and so that's what we're trying to do here. But make sure you subscribe and like and comment content. Like I said, 2025 is the year where I'm going to try to pour a lot into YouTube and kind of grow this community here on YouTube. And so make sure you're subscribing to the channel, send it to your friends, get your Foil Hat Gang merch on bnrhomestead.com. Use code FOILHAT10 for 10% off, and we're going to see you next week.